Come on.
I'm never going to believe in politicians. I can tell you, I'll never believe in politicians. I just don't. They've proven themselves unworthy of being believed in.
So, Woody, first of all, congratulations on this film. It's a whole new kind of role for you, I think, and it's such an achievement. I was wondering what first went through your mind when Rob Reiner called you up and said, "Hey, LBJ." What was your first reaction?
Should I talk into this thing?
Yes, that one, please.
Well, I wasn't a big fan of LBJ for the obvious reason of the Vietnam War. So I had to kind of get over that notion because I really wanted to work with Rob, and I think he's a phenomenal director, one of the great directors. So I'm really glad I did it. I still am a little bit ambivalent, or I have some kind of ambiguous emotions about LBJ. I think he's a fascinating guy. Yeah.
And how did you start to prepare to play him? I think I've read that you did a lot of different kinds of research. And how did you prepare?
Yeah, I just did everything I could to research him and reading things. And, there's a lot of stuff out there about LBJ, even though, in a way, I think he's one of the least celebrated or talked about of recent presidents. Well, relatively recent. Recent to a guy like me who's like an octogenarian. But, what really taught me a lot were the phone conversations that he had. LBJ had a lot of conversations that were taped. And it was one of the beautiful things. He was the first guy to do that. And then after him, he was the one who put in the taping in the White House. And then he said to Nixon on the way out, make sure that he as just one of his big recommendations, make sure you record everything. Of course, that's what got Nixon in trouble.
And one thing that I love about your performance is he has it's not just the words he's saying, but just the rhythm, the cadence of his voice, the way he speaks. Obviously, he's from Texas. How did you listen to a lot of that audio to try to get those mannerisms of speech?
Oh, yeah, and, I had a really good voice coach and everything, but I was it's interesting because I was always feeling like really conscious of the way he spoke, and even though we're both from Texas, he has a much different way of speaking. He's from the hill country of Texas, and I was born in a suburb of Houston, and I always felt like, so because of the similarities, but there were also big contrasts. Anyway, I was very conscious of it, and I kept thinking I'm doing it wrong, and in fact, the whole shoot, I felt like, okay, I know Barry, great DP, Arjun, who did the prosthetics, amazing. V. Neil, the makeup person, awesome. Hey, I thought every compartment, every other actor, Rob Reiner, director, everybody, great. And I thought, I'm in the middle of this thing, and I'm just freaking terrible, So it was a relief to see it later with Rob. I saw it, wasn't finished yet, but I saw it in his office, and I thought it was a really fine film.
And what's Rob Reiner like as a director? Does he like to talk a lot beforehand? Does he like to talk on set? What's his process like?
No, he's pretty minimalistic on that. He'll if he sees that you're doing something he doesn't like, he'll give you a couple of ideas, but real minimal. Which I like, because sometimes a director will talk too much, and you think you have, well, okay, I get it, and then he keeps talking, and you're like, no, I don't have it at all. So I like the way he explains things very, everything about the way he shoots is very economical. He knows exactly, he's got the whole thing edited. Really, he's a brilliant guy. but he's got it all edited in his head, and so he knows I need this shot for that bit, I need this shot for that, and so he doesn't waste a lot of time, doing extensive coverage. But I think he's amazing because, more than half of the days that we shot, we were finished shooting by lunch.
Wow.
Yeah. And there'd be times he'd be stressing because we weren't going to finish by lunch. I'd be like, I've never seen this in my life. So that was another reason why I had a little trepidation when the time came to watch the movie, because I thought, did he get the coverage he needed? Did he get this movie? And then I saw it and I thought, oh my God, I love it,
I just want to ask, what do you think has changed in the decades intervening between, obviously not a particularly popular president at the time, as you said. What's really changed in the decades since then that means that we can look at not just what he did, but who he was with a different set of perspective? And by extension, what do you think that says about the way that we're looking at contemporary politics as well?
Well, there's a lot of similarities, presidents say they're going to get us out of the war, and we stay in the war, and we escalate war. And, the similarity is that war just keeps right on going, I guess because it's so damn lucrative. But what's changed, certainly, now there's so much more scrutiny, I think guys like LBJ, they could get away with a lot of stuff. I mean, he didn't get away with the Vietnam War, but Nixon did. Nixon, they kind of made him look like a hero for bringing the boys home, but he kept the bombing up and increased the bombing until, 1975. So in spite of everyone in the streets in the late 60s, thinking we stopped the war. No, it kept going till 75, and 2 million people died, mostly civilians. I do get up on my, I start preaching. I'm sorry, but it makes me so angry. I don't know. But what has changed? I don't know. It seems like politics as usual in the United States of America. It's pretty rare you have a great politician. Usually it's self-interest and interests in their cronies and interests in the industries that brought them to power. And so that's why I'm an anarchist.
Could you try to change the system from the inside and be elected, whatever it's in Hawaii or California one day?
I couldn't take the pay cut or the scrutiny.
What do you admire most about the real Lyndon B. Johnson?
About the real
Yes.
Johnson?
What do you admire most?
He was a hard worker. He really did. He was a tireless worker. And, I feel like the whole civil rights thing, he did really important stuff and brave because, he knew he was going to lose the support of the South, which he did. To this day, the South does not support Democrats. It stayed Republican all this time since him. And it really was wrought by that decision to support the civil rights movement. So I admire him for that. I don't know what part of that was politically expedient or what part of it was fueled by his own passion, which it had to be somewhat of both, But tireless worker. You listen to these phone calls, because I'm in makeup 2 hours in the morning and an hour after, and I'd listen to call after call, and I mean, my God, this guy just never stopped. It was pretty impressive. He's got a real work ethic, whereas I'm generally a pretty lazy person, so I do admire that. Yeah.
But if we look today at Syria, what's happening there, where the United States government has pretty much withdrawn, and in Syria, civilians are being bombed by the Syrian government and the Russian Air Force, and America has left a vacuum. Is that the better world?
Is that a better world?
Just a light question for you.
How's that a better world? I don't know how that's a better world, but it's not for me to comment specifically on Syria or Iraq or Afghanistan. I just think generally like my friend over here, Allie, right, is my chess buddy, who I know from Berlin. She's an author, and she's writing a book about Korea, you know. Now, most people don't know, and I was quizzing the people at lunch a little while ago, and she was the only one who knew, but the number of people who died in Korea was 3.5 million, mostly civilians. So my point is just we have we have mastered war in my country, and we've exported it all over the world. And I don't particularly feel like that's something I like to be represented by. Now, as for what's going on in Syria, I'm no expert. I don't really know what to say about that. It's just another mess. But I just don't think that, you know, we've spent, I think, $2 trillion in the Middle East now, over $2 trillion. I mean, imagine what you could do with that money, yeah. So I don't know that all of our so much of our tax dollars go into all of these, you know, these weapons manufacturers. I just don't know if that's the way to go. I can imagine how much rainforest you could buy up, how much, you know, we got unbelievable ecological problems now. And like 14 of the last, every month in the last 14 months have been record set in that month of all time for the hottest months on record. And in the last 8 years, the hottest 8 years on record. And there's people, you know, like Trump and a bunch of other nutcases who still refuse to believe in global warming because it's not, you know, economically, you know, advantageous to believe in that. Well, I don't know. What kind of government is that? I'd like to see a government where the people actually, where the people running things actually care, and they're not just taking care of their buddies.
I'm just going to wrap by asking you, I think it's great news that you're going to work with Rob Reiner again. So
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us a little bit about this new film you're doing. It's about journalists, I believe. So be careful.
Yeah. Well, I play a journalist, believe it or not. It's shocking. But it's called Shock and Awe. And there's a group of journalists that were working for Knight Ridder. You guys are, I'm sure, familiar with Knight Ridder. It has like 31 newspapers, publications that it gives articles to, and they print them. And these guys back, you know, when Bush was president and, you know, creating that whole foment to war, these guys were writing these articles with also a lot of inside information and saying, what is this thing about trying to bring Iraq into this, as if Iraq, with this secular leader, had anything to do with this jihadist, you know, like, you know, bin Laden, you know, like there's no connection. And of course, there was no connection, and also saying there are no weapons of mass destruction. So they were writing these articles, and nobody was publishing them. Meanwhile, they'd published the stuff from, I think it was Judy Miller, maybe, who was a New York Times journalist who since got booted, but she was getting stuff fed straight from Cheney and a lot of those guys. You know, some not very accurate information, yellow cake, all that, where she'd write these articles and they'd go out to all these other publications, and the one that usually Knight Ridder would give stories to, and those would be published all over the country. And I remember it was a very patriotic time. Everybody was feeling very patriotic. I wasn't. I was thinking, this is nonsense, you know. We're going to get pushed into another war, as I call it, Bush War II.
Okay, so are you shooting that one already, or when is that shoot? Do you know?
Oh, so we start that. I'm going there in, I think, 5 days to New Orleans. So we started LBJ a year ago, and so a year hence, back in New Orleans with Rob Reiner, very lucky.
So you do have a work ethic, after all.
Well, it's totally against my nature, but I seem to I keep actually working. So I got to do something. Well, you don't know. You'll see it, and you'll be like, that was a disaster. So you'll be like, you should have worked harder.
No.